Well, folks, here we are again for the weekly forecast. Before we get to the main forecast, let's take a brief look at what's happened during this past week. Of course, last week I talked about the potential for a cold front to be moving in during the middle of the week with a much stronger reinforcing shot of cold air moving in as we approach the weekend. We did get the cold front coming in during the midweek period, but the reinforcing shot of cold air came in on Thursday instead of Friday. And what that ended up doing was creating an upslope flow condition across the Panhandle, and we were able to generate the beginnings of some accumulating snowfall as we moved into late Thursday night and early Friday morning, and that continued through most of the day Friday. And we're seeing still some continuations, light snowfall across the Panhandle with the heaviest accumulations across the northern half of the Panhandle. And we do expect to see that snowfall end as the day progresses. For most of the state, we're going to see a very cold weekend with a very strong possibility that most locations north of Interstate 80 are going to see a hard freeze with scattered frost to hard freeze conditions likely across the southern one-third of the state. So let's take a look at the upper air models and see as we progress through this week what we can expect. And as we go to the upper air models, the first thing I'll draw your attention to, here's that broad upper air trough with a very, very cold air that's moved in. We do have some energy over eastern Nebraska that's going to generate some light precipitation because we have such a dry atmosphere at the surface. It's going to have to overcome that. So a lot of the energy is going to go into moisten up the atmosphere before it gets to the surface. We still might expect to see maybe a tenth to a quarter inch in some isolated pockets. We also will be looking for this piece of energy moving through the Panhandle that might reinvigorate some of the snow activity, but most of it is expected to end before noon. So we're looking at highs somewhere between the 40 to 45 degree range in the Panhandle and the Northeast. And as we get into the southern portion of the state where we'll see warmer air, we may make it up into the low 50s. Now, as we go into tomorrow, most of that energy is going to slide to the east. We're still going to be under a cold northwest flow, so we'll be looking at highs in the northeast somewhere between 48 and 52. And as we get into extreme southwestern Nebraska and possibly even the southern Panhandle, we might make it up into the low 60s. Now, as we go into Monday, we're going to see another piece of energy trying to drop south, where right now they're going to keep that coldest of that air to the east of us. We'll be looking at temperatures in the north around the mid-50s, and as we get into extreme southwestern Nebraska, we'll be looking at the upper 60s. Now, as we go into Tuesday, that cold air is going to just barely buffet the portions of north central and northeastern Nebraska, so we'll see temperatures drop back into the upper 40s, and as we go into the extreme southern Nebraska, we'll be looking at much around the low 60 degree range, but I don't expect any precipitation with this system. Now, as we go to Wednesday, as that moves eastward, we're going to start to see high pressure build in and warmer conditions. We're looking at highs in the upper 50s to low 60s across the northeast to potentially the 70 degree mark across south central and southwest Nebraska. As we go into Thursday, the ridge builds even farther. We get a little bit additional warming. We're looking at highs in the upper 60s across the northeast to approaching the 80 degree mark across the southwest. And as we go into Friday, we'll be looking at possibly even warmer conditions, low 80s to the southwest, and in the northern parts of the state, we'll approach the 70 degree mark. 8 to 14 day forecast keeps the cold air in place, and in terms of precipitation, we do show below normal precipitation, but there's a big upper air low that's expected to move out and increase our precipitation chances as the weekend progresses.